Right, next up is the inner gearbox cover. This is going to take a bit more work. We've got to take the lay shaft bearing, gearbox main shaft bearing out. We've got to take the lay shaft bearing out from this end. We've got to take the butterfly quadrant off, and then we've got to take the neutral indicator switch out. We need to do all this because we're going to go and get them grit blasted, vapor blasted rather, and so they need to be completely stripped. Okay, I think we'll take the bits off first because they don't need heating, and then we'll take the bearing out because we need to heat the casing for that. Well, I finally got the neutral indicator switch out of the bottom of the gearbox housing, but it's a complete nightmare because you can get the switch out, but then they've got this really weird adapter thing which is only got 2 flats on it and sits up there, and you cannot get a spanner on it. It's just a nightmare. Anyway, in the end I got it out by managing to lock. I put the switch back in, locked the switch onto this adapter, and then I was able to unscrew it by unscrewing the switch. So that's the switch. You need that little pin, and that's the adapter. Anyway, that's out. So next we'll move on to the bearing and the butterfly quadrant. Right, what I was going to say was, just as a note, that the actual switch is a Whitworth. You need a Whitworth spanner, and this weird adapter thing is AF, if you can manage to get a spanner on it, which you'll be damn lucky to. Right, I'm now going to take the butterfly quadrant off the inner gearbox cover. So simply remove the split pin here, and then the shaft comes out, and that will just release the quadrant. I nearly forgot, there is of course another split pin on the inside. So there's 2 split pins, one there and one there, and then you can take the shaft out. Right, so that's the butterfly out. With the shaft it runs on, which also has a little oil seal in it, a little O-ring there. Okay, so all that's left to do now on the gearbox inner casing is to remove the main bearing, which seems pretty shot to me, and the needle roller bearing for the lay shaft. Right, so now we're going to try and drive both the bearings out in the inner casing. I've heated them up, and I've got 2 drifts, otherwise known as sockets. I'll try drifting out the main bearing first. You have to do that on the inner race because there's no other way of doing it, but that bearing doesn't feel good anyway, so I think I'm going to replace that straight out. I don't think it's going to be quite so straightforward with the needle roller bearing, but we'll give it a go. I've got a socket that just fits inside the needle roller bearing. And there we go. Both bearings out. And so that's the very hot inner casing completely stripped. So, right, next up we've got the outer gearbox cover. So we need to remove the kickstart spring and ratchet, and then the gear change mechanism. Well, bit of a nightmare. There's no way I can get this cotter pin out of the kickstart. Absolutely no. I've heated that till it's virtually glowing, and that cotter pin is completely and utterly seized in there, which is probably why the kickstart's missing. So I'm going to have to take it down to the engineers and see if they can work their magic on it, because you know, it's just not shifting for me. So then I'm going to remove the cover plate. Can we see that? I think we can. And that will reveal the various springs and that underneath. Yeah, I don't know if I mentioned, by the way, but I cleaned all this up. I mean, this is a bit that was absolutely covered in grease, and I gave everything a quick wash down, especially this, because it was so completely gunged up, and of course it still is now. And that's even after a good wash with white spirit. It's just completely messed up, but never mind. Right, so this reveals the sort of gear change mechanism in the outer casing. You've got these two, what are they called, pulls? I'm trying to think, dogs. They've got a special name, but of course I can't remember them. Anyway, they come out, and you need to check that these are still quite sharp, and then we're going to replace the springs that pushes them up. When I had a fairly sloppy gear change at one point, and just by changing the springs in here, that made the world of difference to the gear change. And then there's these two sort of curved springs, and again changing those makes all the difference. So I'll probably change these pulls, can't think of the right name. I'll change their springs, and I'll change these springs as a matter of course, and that can really serve to make the gearbox, the gear change much sharper. Right, I've eventually driven this out through the, took a lot of fighting back, a lot of heat, but I've driven the shaft that was, that was there, so just drove the shaft out through the back of here, and so it's fully apart. There's no oil seal in there because obviously this being the T160, it goes into this outer chamber. We do have the, mind you, there is a little needle roller bearing in here for the cross shaft. So when it cools down, I'll see what that's like. I think it's okay, that. So I shall probably get away without, see if I can get away without changing. Then I'm going to take it to the engineers and get them to see if they can remove this cotter pin, because there's no way I can get it out, and then we'll get it all polished back up. There's a bit of damage to the casing, and hopefully I can leave that bearing in. I don't think I've ever removed that needle roller bearing in there. I'm just looking now to work out how to get it out. I don't think it would be that easy to get out, to be honest. I'm not sure. Right, I've just come to do the next bit of video and realised that there's no sound on it. I must have forgotten to turn the mic on or something. So the next bit, I'll do the video and I'll do a voiceover, which will probably not match the video. So if it sounds a bit strange, that's why.
So we're looking at the outer primary chain casing and removing the gear change. That circlip comes off the gear lever, and then there's a dust cover, the shaft, and there may be a space underneath, but there's not in this case. And then the shaft simply pushes through with a foot on the other side. You pull it and the shaft comes out. And that's the gear shaft removed from the casing. And there's there'll be an oil seal just there underneath the dust cover, and we can prise that out with a oil seal remover. There we go. And then we want to remove the ramp, just knock it through with a hammer from the other side, and there we go.
And just to mention that if you want any more detailed information about what's on the videos, then there is the workshop manual that goes alongside the videos, and that covers restoring the whole bike, not just the engine. And that's available from all good booksellers around the world. You could just put my name, Chris Rook, into the search bar, like Amazon search bar or wherever, and it should come up.